So I want to give a small English summary what I just said today. In the beginning, I talked once more about the theory of time that Dogen Zenji exposes in this chapter. It's not his own original theory, but it's something that had been in existence in India for a long time. Basically, according to Indian sources, there are 6,480,000 ksanas, instants, passing during the 24 hours of the day. And each of these instants is new. So even though we are influenced by our old karma, this moment is completely new. There's no reason for you not to arouse bodhimind, not to arouse this thought of, I want to help others before I'm saved myself. Maybe never in the past you had this thought, but this moment is new. Now is the time for the path of the deluded person and the Buddha to cross, kan no doko in Japanese. These two paths are crossing right now. And such a crossing happens 6,480,000 times a day. But usually we're not aware of that. We're not aware that we change, we die, and are reborn so quickly. We might be aware that we're not the same person that we were 10 years ago. We might even remind ourselves, well, maybe I'm not the same person that I was before this talk started. Even in the course of 1 hour, your whole life can change, you can change. In theory, at least, with each breath you change. When you breathe in, you're not the same person that you were when you breathed out. And then if you breathe out again, you're not the same person that you were when you breathe in. Which is, with each breath, you die and you are reborn. But when it comes to the unit of a ksana, which would be the 75th part of 1 second, we don't realize it anymore. And Dogen Zenji says, well, actually only Buddhas realize it. Only Buddhas can realize this. And after that, Dogen Zenji quotes a quite lengthy part of an old Indian sutra where one of the bhikkhus, one of the training monks, asks the Buddha, is there a metaphor, an example, how you can explain how fast our lives change? And there's this metaphor of the 4 archers that, how do you say? They shoot arrows north, south, east, west in all 4 directions. And there's a runner who says, I will catch all these 4 arrows before they hit the ground. And Buddha asks the monk, do you think that that's a fast runner? And the monk says, yes, that must be a very fast runner indeed. And then the Buddha says, well, but there's actually demons and deities that are faster than that. And the sun and the moon, they are moving faster than that. And your life is changing even faster than the sun and the moon are moving. And basically, that's something that Dogen Zenji says repeated over and over again. For example, also in the Shobogenzo Zuimonki, he says it in Gakudo Yoshinshu. Be aware of impermanence, and not only of impermanence around you, but you are not the same. Tomorrow, you're not even the same in the next breath. So the game, how you play it, it doesn't make a sense, because usually we play the game for tomorrow. Where do I want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? What's gonna happen to me in my old age? Or if we believe in rebirth, we try to improve our karma so that in the next life we are reborn in a better place. And thus, we forget that you only have this one moment. You only have this one moment to practice. You have only this one moment to arouse Bodhimind. If you're actually aware of this, your game changes. It's not anymore about improving your karma, saving money, trying to be happier in 5 years from now. It's about letting go of yourself in this moment. And Dogen Zenji says, from the time of the Buddha, all of the 28 ancestors in India, that means Shakyamuni, Mahakashapa, Ananda, all the way down to Bodhidharma, who transmitted Zen to China. All of them, without exception, had this thought of Jimi Tokudo Sendota in Japanese, forgetting yourself for the sake of the others. And the same in China. You won't find a single ancestor which wouldn't have had this thought. And then Dogen Zenji, in the end of what I talked about today, says something interesting. He says, even if you've reached, or first he says, well, what you need is this thought. Thinking about others before you think about yourself, because as long as you think about your problem, I want to save my problem. I want to save my problem. It's exactly this perspective. It's this approach. It's about me. It's about my problem. Buddhism is supposed to help me out of this problem. As long as you have this approach, you will never save your problem, because this approach is your problem. That's your problem, that you think your problem needs to be solved first. And the moment you ask yourself, okay, let's forget about my problem. What can I do for others? What can I do for others? In that moment, you realize my problem has been solved, because your perspective has changed. Your problem was that the only thing you wanted to think about was your problem. The moment you tell yourself, well, what can I do for others? The problem is solved. That's what's meant by Jimi Tokudo Sendota. You need this change in perspective if you want to practice. That's something that Dogen Zenji says here. He says it in other works like Tenzo Kyokun, the instructions for the cook. Basically everywhere. You need to arouse Bodhimind. But then he says this interesting thing. Having aroused Bodhimind is just like the arriving of dawn. Even the sun hasn't risen. The sun here stands for enlightenment. The sun of enlightenment hasn't appeared yet, but the sky has turned a little bit brighter. So don't think that you're already a Buddha when you have Bodhimind. Maybe you have this thought, but don't pretend to be a Buddha. Even if you have climbed the 50th stage of enlightenment. That's a teaching that you find in Kegon Buddhism, or I think in China it's called Huayan. In this Huayan philosophy, they group everything in groups of 10. So there's 10 stages of enlightenment, and there's 5 of those. And if you've climbed to the highest one, then you are a perfectly realized bodhisattva. And then Dogen Zenji says, interesting, but even then, you're still a bodhisattva. You're not a Buddha. And he says, even the 28 patriarchs in India and all of the Chinese ancestors, they weren't Buddhas. They were bodhisattvas. It's interesting because usually Dogen doesn't say that. Usually in Zen, we say you just have to sit and you're Buddha already. The reason why he says it here is maybe at that time when he wrote this chapter, there were students of Dogen who had practiced with him for 20 years or more. They had practiced with him when he was still in Koshoji, and they moved with him to Eiheiji. They had sat for thousands of hours in Zazen. They had maybe experienced Shinjin Datsulaku, the dropping off of body and mind. They had all kinds of Satori experiences. So I could imagine that at that time, there were quite a lot of people in the Sangha that said, we are Buddhas already. We have quit the game. We're not part of the rat race anymore. We just sit and live on whatever donations we receive from the patrons or from the people living in the villages around Eheji. And Dogen at that point obviously thought it's important to remind people, no, you're not a Buddha. The story doesn't end with Zazen and taking a break from the game, but you have to return to the table. You have to play a new game. Forget being a Buddha. You're a bodhisattva. Even Bodhidharma was a bodhisattva. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to China. Why would a Buddha leave India and come to China? It was this thought, it's not about me. I have to share it. I have to share it. All of the Chinese ancestors wouldn't have continued to practice and to teach if they were Buddhas. They were bodhisattvas. Forget the Buddha. Practice as a bodhisattva. Okay, maybe so much from my side, a short English digest. If you have questions, you're welcome to ask them.